What up, everybody? Doing back, and today I'm going to be doing the fastest breakdown that I can possibly do of The Walking Dead Season 6, Episode 15, titled East. So let's get into it. So, this episode picks up pretty much where the left off with Carol on the run. So she stole one of the cars from outside the Alexandria gate, one of the ones with all the spikes in it. That comes into play later, and she heads off on the road. Meanwhile, the Alexandrians are living their lives. There's a shower scene with Glenn and Maggie. This is not a good scene. This is probably the worst way that they could have started an episode, just because you never want a happy moment in The Walking Dead. That is just a fact. And one of the interesting things about this scene is people noticed Maggie touches Glenn's head a lot, which is possibly foreshadowing his death that may or may not happen next episode. I hope it doesn't. I would rather Daryl take his place, but things are looking like it's going to be Glenn. Anyways, Daryl takes off out of the Alexandria gate, going to an unknown destination. Glenn, Michonne, and Maggie all see it, and Glenn and Michonne decide to go after him. Rosita tags along, and the three of them hit the road together. Rick finds out Carol left and starts freaking out. He says no one else is leaving. Everyone's stuck behind the wall because he doesn't want anyone else out there, except for him and Morgan, who decide to hit the road together. So now those two are off on their own, and they're just doing buddy stuff, looking for Carol. Speaking of Carol, she is driving the spiky car down the road, and all of a sudden this truck filled with saviors drives past, and they gun down. They do like a drive-by shoot of the tires, popping them, making her stop. They force her out of the car because, they're just bad people. So when she comes out, she has her arms raised. Something seems off. She's holding a rosary, and things aren't looking right. They keep pushing her, and she snaps. She actually winds up having a gun she sewed into her sleeve that she guns all the saviors down with. Quick thing to note, in the screenshot, you do see a savior with one of the spears from the hilltop, just showing that they do trade with the hilltop. So after Carol guns all them down, a couple of them survive. She's actually stuck behind a car, and she winds up driving a pole through one of the guys, one of the spiky poles through one of them. And the reason they actually gunned down the car and stopped her in the first place was because they recognized the car from Alexandria, because they do know where Alexandria is. So, in the middle of all this craziness going on, Carl picks up a gun that has a drawing of Lucille scratched into it. This is one of the guns that on Talking Dead they confirmed was stolen from a savior's compound, and that is why it has Lucille on it. Meanwhile, Glenn, Michonne, Rosita all catch up with Daryl, who does not want to deal with any of their crap, and he just wants to continue on hunting the saviors. Rosita tags along. Glenn and Michonne decide to go home. Glenn turns to Michonne as they're far enough away from Daryl and says things are going to go wrong, people are going to get killed, basically. And he's apparently a fortune teller, because right as he's saying it, all of a sudden the saviors jump out, and multiple step out, surrounding them. And one of the saviors that steps out happens to be Dwight. Yeah, he's back. From there, Morgan and Rick are on the lookout for what? They're looking for Carol. They come across the car wreckage area where Rick puts a knife into one of the living saviors' heads, and then they're off again. While they're there, though, we do find out Rick is proud of Carol for killing all these saviors. He is happy that she was able to take on more than one and survive. He calls her a force of nature. And then he says, if he could go back, he would have killed Karen and David himself. So he does not have any hard feelings towards that still. He thinks it's the right thing to do, which does make Morgan happy. So the two of them keep on going, and they come across a small barn. In this barn is a certain someone who may or may not be from the Kingdom, which is the third main community, or the actual fourth main community from the Walking Dead comics, including the Saviors. The only reason me and a lot of other people think this is because he's wearing all the body armor and he has a spear, meaning he trades with the Hilltop. So those are the reasons. From there, Rick admits to Morgan that Carol did, or that Michonne did steal his protein bar, which is just a bonding moment between the two of them, and Rick actually goes home to Alexandria because Morgan tells him to. So Rick leaves and Morgan continues on looking for Carol. Then we actually find out that Carol dropped her rosary, which was actually picked up by one of the living saviors, who then goes out on the hunt for Rick and Morgan and Carol. That will come into play next episode, I feel like. Well, guaranteed it will, because it's a loose end this episode, next episode, season finale. I hope Morgan winds up killing this guy, because Morgan needs to kill. Daryl, towards the end of the episode, is running around the woods, comes across a captured Glenn and Michonne, who start freaking out. He doesn't understand why. Rosita's with him, by the way. And then we find out that someone has a gun to his head, and that someone just happens to be Dwight. So Dwight and the Saviors jump out and basically surround Daryl and Rosita, and Dwight says, "Hey, Daryl." And as Daryl's turning around, he fires off a shot into Daryl's chest. In reality, this would kill Daryl, but clearly it doesn't, because afterward Dwight says, "You'll be all right." The theory is that Dwight shot Daryl in the shoulder, kind of rendering him unable to use his crossbow, because, as Dwight says in one of the previous episodes, the thing kicks horribly. In last episode he says it, when Daryl gets a crossbow back. So, yeah, Dwight shoots Daryl. Daryl goes down, but Dwight tells him he'll be alright, meaning probably he's fine. He'll be there next episode. Hopefully he gets Lucille, and I know a lot of people disagree with me, but Glenn's my favorite character, and I really want him to stick around. Anyways, I forgot to get a screenshot of this, but during all this chaos, Maggie starts having pregnancy problems. She gets her hair cut by Enid, showing more of the bond between the two of them, and then all of a sudden she collapses onto the floor with some pain with the baby, meaning I think Herschel Jr. might die. The reason I think this is because Judith is still alive, and in the comic Judith is not, meaning Herschel Jr. doesn't need to be there because Judith is already there. They only need one baby to fill out any possible storyline from the comic that could play into the future. But I'm going to put my odds on the table that if the baby dies, Glenn lives, and if Glenn lives, the baby dies. If the baby lives, Glenn dies. That's how I'm going to say it. So that's kind of my quick prediction for next episode. Anyways, this was a really good episode, pretty intense. Out of 10, I would give it an 8 because it was not a perfect episode. It wasn't No Way Out. It wasn't anything like that, but it still was a really good episode. So I think it definitely deserves it. Anyways, thank you all for watching my in-depth review of The Walking Dead episode 15 of season 6 titled East. Thank you all for watching. I'm D-Man. D-Man out.